Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into the incredible, heartbreaking, and, honestly, pretty terrifying backstory of one of the most towering figures in the Mahabharata, Drona. It's an origin story that kind of gets glossed over sometimes, but we're going straight to the foundational text today to map out exactly how he came to power. And let me tell you, it is an absolute masterclass in how one single broken promise can literally alter the destiny of an entire kingdom.
So let's start right in the middle of this bizarre mystery. Picture the scene. The elite Kuru princes of Hastinapura are out playing, and their ball drops down a dry well. These are highly trained royal combatants, right? Yet here they are, staring helplessly down a hole, completely defeated by a well. Just then, this guy wanders up. The text describes him as decrepit, lean, darkish, basically looking like a wandering beggar. He takes one look at these frustrated elite kids and just openly mocks them. He's like, "Shame on your kshatriya might?" Then he poses this totally impossible question. How do you retrieve a lost ball from a deep well using absolutely nothing but blades of grass?
Now, what's really fascinating here is the wager he makes. This random beggar, who, spoiler alert, we'll soon find out is actually the master Drona living in total secrecy, decides to raise the stakes. To prove he's not bluffing, he pulls off his own ring and tosses it right down into the dry well next to their ball. He turns to the eldest prince, Yudhishthira, and casually tells him he can fish both items out with just a handful of long grass. The price for this literal miracle? Just one dinner. A single meal. Yudhishthira is totally baffled, right? He basically tells the guy, look, if you can actually pull this off, you can have whatever you need for the rest of your life.
Well, what he does next is nothing short of a magic trick. But it's not just random magic, it's a systematic, incredibly scientific mastery of his art. First, he takes a handful of ordinary long grass and invests it with powerful mantras, literally turning vegetation into a precision tool. Then he throws one single blade down to pierce the ball. Next, he throws another blade to pierce the first one, then a third to pierce the second, and so on. He literally builds a continuous chain out of grass to fish this ball out of the well, and he doesn't stop there. For the ring, he just grabs a bow and arrow, shoots the ring, and zips it straight up, coolly handing it over to the jaw-dropped princes. Insane, right? Understandably, the princes are totally amazed by this impossible feat and bow to him. They instantly realize they're standing in the presence of true greatness, completely forgetting his ragged appearance. They're begging to know who he is and how they can serve him. But Drona, he doesn't give them a name. Instead, he just gives them an instruction. He tells them, "Do ye repair unto Bhishma, and describe to him my likeness and skill. The mighty one will recognize me." He knows exactly who he's dealing with. And more importantly, he knows exactly who holds the real power in Hastinapura.
So the princes sprint back and tell their powerful patriarch, Bhishma, exactly what went down. Hearing this, Bhishma instantly puts two and two together. This beggar has to be the legendary Drona. And this realization brings up a massive, really shocking contrast. On one side, you've got figures like the incredibly powerful King Drupada of Panchala, rolling in wealth and land, and on the other, you have Drona, a guy with literal superhuman combat skills, reduced to a starving, mocked beggar, trading miracles for a single plate of food. It really makes you stop and ask, how on earth does a master capable of such feats fall so far through the cracks of society?
To answer that, Drona ends up pouring out his entire tragic backstory to Bhishma. He maps out this lifelong, deeply complicated relationship with a man named Yajnasena, who we better know as Drupada, the prince of the Panchalas. Their history is a wild ride. It goes from them being inseparable boyhood friends, to making a grand royal promise, to taking totally different paths in life, and ultimately crashing into a really bitter reunion and betrayal.
Let's zoom in on that royal promise for a second. We've all probably made big, sweeping promises to our best friends when we were young, right? But this was a royal vow. Back when they were going through years of rigorous, really humble study together in the ashram, Drupada would constantly tell Drona how much he loved him. He even made this massive vow. "When the king installeth me as monarch of the Panchalas, the kingdom should be thine." Drupada solemnly swore that his future kingdom, his wealth, all his happiness would be shared equally with Drona. And Drona, he took that completely to heart. To him, this promise was the ultimate proof of their unbreakable lifelong bond.
But yeah, let's fast forward a bit. Years later, Drona is married to Kripi, and they have a little boy, Aswatthaman. Now, despite Drona's immense knowledge and unparalleled skill, the family is living in absolute crushing poverty. The text paints this picture of a man so poor, he literally cannot even provide milk for his crying child. Completely desperate, Drona starts wandering from country to country,
He's specifically just trying to beg for a single milch cow so his son can drink milk, without making another poor family sacrifice their only wealth. But it doesn't work. His wanderings are completely unsuccessful, and he has to return home empty-handed. And that failure sets up what is, honestly, probably the most heartbreaking moment in the entire source text, the flower water tragedy. Little Aswatthaman sees all the rich kids in the neighborhood drinking milk, and of course he cries because he wants some too. So his playmates decide to play a really cruel trick. They mix powdered rice into some water and hand it to the innocent little guy. Aswatthaman, who has literally never tasted real milk in his entire life, drinks this cloudy water and actually starts dancing around with joy, shouting, "I have taken milk! I have taken milk!" You can just imagine Drona watching his son dancing happily while these neighborhood kids smirk at him. He is absolutely shattered. But the real final nail in the coffin comes from the local busybodies. They start openly mocking him, saying, "Fie upon the indigent Drona, who strives not to earn wealth, whose son drinking water mixed with powdered rice, mistaketh it for milk, and danceth with joy." Hearing his poverty dragged out into the open like that, and seeing his son's naive joy being ridiculed, Drona is just utterly humiliated. He is completely beside himself with grief and self-reproach.
Right then and there, something snaps. Drona resolves he will never ever be anyone's servant just to earn a paycheck. He finds the whole idea of servitude completely hateful. I mean, imagine having to swallow your pride like that. So instead of begging from strangers, he remembers that grand promise his childhood best friend made all those years ago. He packs up his wife and kid and heads straight to the court of Drupada, who is now officially the king. Drona walks right up to him, not as a beggar, but confidently, as an equal, and says, "O tiger among men, know me for thy friend." He's fully expecting a warm embrace, right? He expects his old buddy to make good on that promise of shared wealth.
But instead of a hug, Drupada actually laughs in his face. He looks Drona up and down, this ragged, starving man, and essentially casts him off like he's some vulgar street beggar. And then he delivers this devastating, timelessly harsh societal rejection. Friendship can only subsist between persons that are of equal rank, but not between those that are unequally situated. Wow. Drupada literally insults Drona's intelligence for even thinking a poor man could just stroll in and claim to be friends with a king.
Seriously, listen to the brutal logic Drupada uses to just completely dismantle their past bond. He starts laying out these so-called harsh truths. First, he says that time itself just destroys friendships. Second, that their old bond was only for a particular purpose while they were studying, and hey, that purpose is over now. He flat out states there can be no friendship between the rich and the poor, between the uneducated and the educated, or between a coward and a hero. Drupada completely gaslights him, denying the past promise of sharing the kingdom entirely, and offers Drona nothing more than a single night's food and shelter. You know, exactly what you toss to a random vagrant. Think about what this actually does to Drona. He is deeply insulted, utterly humiliated in front of his starving family, and he absolutely refuses the charity. He walks out of Drupada's palace immediately, but he leaves filled with this absolute burning wrath. He makes a solemn vow right then to do whatever it takes to exact his revenge. And it's this exact burning desire for retribution that leads him straight to Hastinapura. He figures out pretty quickly that if you want to destroy a king, you need to train princes who are capable of taking down a king. Which brings us right back full circle to where we started. Drona finishes pouring out this tragic backstory to Bhishma, and Bhishma's response to all this? He immediately gives Drona everything he has ever asked for. He tells Drona to string his bow and make the Kuru princes accomplished in arms. Bhishma hands him absolute power, basically saying, "You are the absolute lord of whatever wealth the Kurus have, and of their kingdom." Literally overnight, Drona goes from a starving, mocked beggar to having the unlimited backing of the most powerful empire in the land. And that brilliantly sets the stage for the entire rest of the epic, leaving us with one incredibly vital question. What happens when the ultimate master is driven by the ultimate desire for revenge? Drona now has unlimited resources, absolute authority, and an entire generation of elite royal pupils at his command, and it is all fueled by one single broken promise. It really makes you wonder about the true cascading cost of betrayal, doesn't it? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this deep dive gave you a completely new perspective on this legendary origin story.